of the Smithfield Town Council. Mr. Stallings?
Yes, sir. The main item on our agenda today is a continued discussion of the request for commitment of funds for the Bench Church Boulevard and Turner Drive corridor transportation improvements. Just a little background, as you know, this project has been going, or the work on this project has been going on since early 2023. At that time, staff, as well as county staff, private individuals, and their consultants began discussing the growth pressures on that corridor, and the decision was made to do a master transportation improvement analysis for everything happening there. That work, again, started early 2023. The county provided a presentation to council in October of 23 on the revenue sharing grant that was being applied for. That grant application ultimately was successful and provided a partial funding of the project that with that partial funding still required a gap of $4.5 million. In late August, staff was approached with the funding scenario for this that did look at the cost sharing between the town and the county based on projects that were located in the respective jurisdictions. Presentation was then done to council in late September of 2024, which was the first time council received this information. At this time, the allocation of funding for projects that are within the town limits totals about $2.3 million. We do currently have two developers that are jointly seeking rezoning approval to have an active application with us now, and they have committed to fund their portion of that project, which totals about $1 million. So that leaves remaining about 1.3 million for the town. Now, the anticipation would be that if the other parcels ever were developed, those developers would then pay their pro rata share. However, that's none of the projects that are in the town limits have approvals, so all those are still contingent upon the projects being approved. If any of them aren't approved, then the town would then be responsible for that portion as well. So the town's portion could be anywhere between $900,000 and $2.3 million, depending on which projects ultimately get approval and don't get approval.
Does that $2.3 million include the potential for cost overruns?
This does not include that. There would be in addition to that. The total project budget right now is 7.6, just under $7.7 million.
I just want to make sure.
Right, and so there is contingency in that, but if it did go above that project or that budgeted amount, we would jointly have to fund the overruns. So that's where we are right now. The county is asking the town to consider committing to the funding scenario for the project. There is a deadline of the beginning of November for the county to either accept or not accept the revenue sharing funds, which requires them to commit to the funding at that time. There are representatives from the county here. If there's questions of them, questions of me, we'll be glad to try to answer them the best we can.
Any questions of the town manager by members of council?
I have a question.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Butler.
I know you said we have two stakeholders possibly. I know one is Promontory. Who is the other one?
Well, the Promontory has two groups as part of their rezoning application. Greenwood Homes is the residential component of that application, and then Henry Layden and his group is the commercial portion of that project. So the two separate entities have committed to their portions. They would make those as part of their proffers during the rezoning process.
Further questions, Madam Vice Mayor?
No, that answers my question.
All right, thank you. I heard some, whatever, Councilman Gibbs.
There was no flexibility in the November 1st deadline.
That's a county question.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Stallings, before we bring the county up at this juncture? All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Keaton and Ms. Oliver. Congratulations on your upcoming retirement, sir. I wish you the very best for sure.
A little premature, but a little, next summer, so it's not immediate.
Well, you're not thinking about it either, are you?
No.
Yeah, okay. Do y'all have anything that you'd like to or can add to what we've already discussed previously or anything?
Well, just to let you know, our board took action at their meeting last week to conditionally approve the county's portion. I know that was one of the questions at the last meeting was, because our board had not taken action yet, so they've taken action too. And we've gotten similar commitments from the private parties on our side of Turner Drive as well. One had already made a commitment, Sweetgrass, and then the Frontier Development, which is Wawa, and the Harrison Lear group has also committed to their portion as well.
Okay. Ms. Oliver, do you have anything to add or you good to go?
Just regarding the November 1st deadline, VDOT does have an operating policy of 90 days. We've had some preliminary discussions. Everyone had asked if there was any extension. We think the best way to pursue that is to just keep working as diligently as possible through our process and hope that they're understanding as we go through that there's time constraints everyone has to work under meeting our board deadlines. So we do think we're still in good shape. If it takes us a few extra weeks, we just don't want to spread that out any more than we have to and make sure that we can show that we're diligently working towards getting resolution.
And I would presume this meeting is part of that diligent work.
Correct, and we've scheduled to plan on going to our board at their next meeting as well to follow up from this one.
Thank you. Mr. Stallings?
Just to provide a little more clarity to the piece that the other growth in town that was part of this, the Philip Edwards parcel, as well as all of the frontage there along Route 10 is part of that. And then also what's referred to as the Molly Turner tract, which is adjacent to the promontory properties, but is not part of their project. Those are the two areas that are part of this master study that currently do not have proposals on them as far as development. So those would be the two areas that, if development came to the town, we would be looking for them to contribute their pro rata share. But at this time, we don't have any prospective applicants on either of those. There's been some light inquiries about commercial along Route 10, but we haven't seen an official proposal from anybody.
Question, I'm sorry, Madam Vice Mayor?
Jamie and Randy, I have a question. On this revenue sharing grant cost share, how did you come up with the percentages?
So we looked at it several ways. First, we looked at the actual percent of impact based on the projected transportation, the trips. So we looked at each of the parcels based on a projected land use assumption, based on your comp plan, and we projected percentages of trips based on that. Then we also got input from our stakeholder groups, the private sector, some of the ideas that they had, some of the proposals that they had seen, and kind of looked at two different options between those two, and staff created a third option, basically collaborating to hash those two together into something that we felt was workable. And that's why we think at this point, both the buy-in from the municipalities and also the buy-in that our stakeholders have already committed is important, because it shows that everyone's come together for an understanding that the validity of the TIA stands.
So it's basically based on TIA reports.
Yes, ma'am. The TIA that we did, the master plan that we did, actually accounted for future projected traffic impacts at the location for each of the parcels.
So locality size didn't play, and budget size didn't play any part into it.
No, we were looking strictly at the land uses in those blocks of areas, because, at some point there was some, we don't have a hard and fast project to look at, so we're looking at projections of traffic and things like that. And the private parties had also proposed their own scenario. So they had come up with, because that's what we'd asked them initially. We said, come back with a scenario of how you propose to pay for a portion of this. So it was, we didn't want to be negotiating against ourselves, so we asked them to put something on the table, and then staff put together an alternate view, and then, like I say, like Jamie said, blended the two together to try to come up with something. It's not a perfect science.
My only concern, Randy, and I kind of voiced it to Michael, you know, the community is concerned about the town growing at such a rapid pace. The county already have two stakeholders that are probably pretty much committed. We don't have any stakeholders that are committed, and the commitment that they would be giving us would be contingent upon us approving their development. And so I look at it being that if we make a decision now, that we're kind of going into it committing to our full 2.3 million, because we're not sure that the other is going to happen.
Well, we're sort of in the same boat, because we haven't approved these projects either.
Well, Sweetwater has,
Sweetgrass
has been
is the only
approved,
one.
and
Yep.
hopefully Wow will participate. You know, I don't really know where the county is with that, but I do know that they still have an application on the table.
Correct.
You know, we, a little bit different, we don't have that. It sounds like the promontory may be coming to us at some point pretty soon. But I can't make a decision about inputting some money into the roundabout with the promontory anticipating that we're going to approve their project. That's not the way it works with me. And that's one of my concerns. I don't really know how anybody else feels about it. And I guess, Michael, the other concern that I have, you know, the commitment of 2.3, we're also looking at the multipurpose trail, you know, the farmer's market, if it comes to fruition. I know those three projects are really, really big projects with us. Are we in a financial condition to have the capacity to take care of those? Or did you and Laura have a conversation about that?
We have looked at potential funding scenarios, and you're right, there's a lot of relatively large ticket projects that are out there that we do have to worry about that. At some point in time, it will wind up being a borrowing situation as opposed to depleting cash reserves. So that is a valid concern for us to look at.
Questions? Mr. Collins?
Yes. I have a few, if you don't mind. I want to go through the process that I went through, try to understand everything, and then, I'll be honest with you, I looked for a yes, I just never could get there. Because I do believe in the premise of the idea of planning for the future, doing something that is going to expand something that's going to be prepared for, we know that area is going to grow. So I love the idea, it's just, I'm not sure this is the right solution. And it's just, I'll go through what I went through just so I understand that if I'm on the right track. So the impetus for all this, the traffic circle, was the Wawa. That's what started this, was for the study and all that, was the Wawa. So, and I'm a big Wawa supporter. It's always Wawa versus Sheetz. I'm all Wawa. So I would love for that to happen.
Strike that comment.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. So the Vice Mayor asked about the percentages. I don't like the way the percentages were made up because of this traffic count. A cost-benefit analysis of it a weighted average of this would have been better, and I'll explain a little bit more as I go down this list. I'm just going to go down the revenue sharing list, just so I understand. The Turner North is the Edwards property. That's way out in the future. That $586,000 is, as we sit here today, on the taxpayers. So we don't know if something's going to be developed. We do have a small commercial section, but that's relatively small compared to this amount.
Turner North is the Wawa property.
Oh, I had that as the south.
Turner North is the Henry Layden parcel, the frontage on Route 10.
I had that as,
You're right.
okay. I have that as Cypress Run.
Cypress Run is the piece behind that. If you can turn to the
That's what I did.
map, I believe Turner North should be the dark green portion that's fronting on Route 10.
Oh, I didn't see the difference between the colors.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then Cypress Run is the portion which you guys currently have an application for residential in the back that's blue.
There
Okay.
was a previous table that was shown that had them labeled the other way.
Correct, and I would just
And
point,
that may be the one, I'm off the previous. I'm
You're
off-
right, there was an old one that had them labeled
Okay, maybe
backwards.
I'm off the previous one. Okay. And then, okay, and then going to the Wawa, and why I say cost-benefit analysis is down in Chesapeake, southern Chesapeake, right by Hickory High School, there's a Wawa cash cow. It is a cash cow tax revenue heaven because it is the most crowded Wawa I've ever seen in my life right by a high school. So I'm assuming that this one's going to be just as. All that benefits goes to the county. Town gets none of that benefit, but we are being asked to absorb some of the costs because of that. The promontory, the same thing. It's the water rights. So the county's going to benefit somewhere around $10,000 per water tap. If the promontory does stay at 260 plus units, that's $2.6 million of a benefit. So, but the town is only absorbing the cost. So again, I thought the percentages of a cost-benefit analysis could have been better. And we all know that we're in the middle of an election season, and if the squad of four gets elected on the county, on the board, on the council, all these projects go away. So the Turner North and the promontory, that 500 or 600 and 900 are on the taxpayers. Sweetgrass, I was a little confused because the number here is 541,000, but numbers I've seen before through the traffic study was 1.5 million. So there was a $947,000 savings reduction somewhere that I don't know where that reduction went unless I look down at the future growth for Isle of Wight County at 902,000. So it kind of washes off what the study said. So in reading this, it doesn't appear that the county has an outside cost other than what was already in the traffic study. And then town future growth, that's again is on taxpayers. So if we sit here today, everything we'll say yes to for the traffic circle will be on the taxpayers. I mean, it's unless something changes and promontory is approved and that's a lot of ifs. So again, that's where it's stopping me from getting a yes, because although I think the idea is great, I think the area is going to need improvements. I don't think the promontory needs to come to Turner Drive, from what I understand. They can go, they're working other avenues other than, and I think they've signed into doing it because it's going to benefit, it will benefit them and it'll benefit everyone in the long run, but they don't have to. So again, I am really stopped short. And then, and the other point is the promontory does go through. The county gets 4 times the taxes of property taxes than we do. So again, cost benefit of the percentages would have been a better way, selfishly knowing that the percentages would have been a lot lower for the town because the benefits benefits far outweigh the cost of what this is in, let's say, I've seen you run those plans over 5 or 10 years. So, but there's no specific projects to run it to, so your comeback could be, well, how do we do that because we had no specific projects? Same questions we have. How do we commit to something when we have no approved projects either? So again, I'm just saying I tried for a very long time to come to a yes because I think it's the right thing to do. I just don't think this is the right project to do it with. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Keaton?
If I could just address that. So the Sweetgrass project, the 541,000, I think when we looked strictly at the traffic, it did show a higher percentage. But when they just had their project approved, and they had committed to 2 different ways. They could either pay to lengthen the turn lane along Route 10, making the left turn on the Turner Drive, or contribute to a regional project. And we had calculated their portion of lengthening the turn lane to be roughly $500,000. So when the calculation was redone, that's how it came to the 541.
By not doing that work. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've committed, and we felt like it was the value of what they committed to in their proffer was approximately $500,000. So we felt like that was, pretty much already set in stone because they'd already received approval for their project and their proffer had already been received. The county is committing $1,083,000 that is undetermined. So the part where the middle school and then Isle of Wight other future growth, that is not set towards any specific project. So that's strictly, out of the county coffers. The Cypress Run North, which would be the commercial part, I think from the scenarios that we've seen with what's been submitted, they would have to come out through the roundabout based on what VDOT, I think VDOT's reviewed. And and it depends on how the traffic is structured for the promontory or the Molly Turner piece. Probably a lot of that traffic would have to have a second outlet. They wouldn't all be able to go through the shopping center.
Right, but I think that's still being worked, correct? I mean, that's still.
But I mean,
being
that's,
developed.
yeah, but this,
it's still being understood.
VDOT's probably gonna require them, a lot of that traffic to go another way if they can go a different route. And I would like to just address the roundabout. There was some debate in the paper about whether the roundabout was the right solution. That was not our idea. That was what the private parties came up with as the solution, the only solution that VDOT would accept. Because originally, when Wawa first made their proposal, they wanted a left turn into Wawa and then make a left turn out to go to the high school, and VDOT shot that down and said that absolutely not. That would be a huge safety issue in the mornings and with the traffic backing up. So the only way they came up with a solution, and the private engineers proposed this, was creating a one-lane roundabout. So it was not a county proposal, but a town proposal. This was their solution to provide the access and not have traffic congestion there in the mornings.
To accommodate the Wawa.
Wawa and the project on the other side, the town side. So the commercial work on the town side as well. This was all done as a regional TIA, not
Right.
one specific project. So each of the parties had their input. So because for those commercial properties along Route 10, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, for those commercial properties, they're not going to be able to have direct access to Route 10. They're proposing a road behind the commercial properties, and they would all access the roundabout to get back out to the light.
But that's still in discussions. That's not set in stone with PDOT, right?
Yes, that's, go ahead.
So here's your issue. Route 10 existing already has congestion issues. It's already projected to be a level of service F with or without additional development in the long-range regional transportation plans.
I'm sorry, you said condition F, which I know is the worst, but you said F? Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, in the long-range transportation plan, 2040, 2045, without future development on it. That's just projected with background growth.
Okay.
In the regional transportation plan, it's already red on the board. So when we're looking at how to handle that and how to plan for any future growth of whatever it may look like, because this is a growth corridor for both communities, whether it's these projects or some other project, whether it's now or whether it's 10 years. When we're looking at how to handle that, there's still only so many opportunities for coming out on Route 10, right? Turner Drive, if you want to go around the block, you're all the way down at what, Muddy Cross? Okay, so there's only so many opportunities for going around the block. But what the master plan does do is it creates a small network by creating that secondary service road coming off of the roundabout. The concept is that it creates a road that serves all of those commercial lots from the back and then serves the additional parcels like Cypress Creek from that service road so that all that traffic can circulate internally without going onto Route 10 and adding to the congestion. To do that, people have to be able to take a left and eventually get out to Route 10. To make lefts safely, you have to have some type of control at the intersection because lefts are the dangerous movement. When they plugged any type of controlled intersection in at that location, whether it was a four-way stop or a traffic-controlled light, the level of service was terrible. It was extremely low. So that's why they went with the traffic circle. They ran the numbers with several different options for control at that intersection on Turner Drive so that both Wawa traffic could turn left, also so that whether the residential traffic from Cypress Creek could turn left, or so that when they create that network for those other commercial parcels fronting on Route 10, any of those can turn left. There's no way to allow that left turn safely without some type of stop control at the intersection. And if you have a hard stop, then you have a failure of service because of congestion. So that's what the traffic circle serves. However, also out on Route 10, the project is significantly more than a traffic circle because it adds dual lefts onto Route 10 instead of just lengthening the existing turn lane. And that becomes important because what you're doing is moving the turn traffic out of the through movement so that the light is not backing up, waiting for people that can't get into the turn lane to move out of their way. So those dual lefts become particularly important for improving your through traffic movement for everybody that's going to keep going that's not accessing any of those services. And access management, not allowing everybody on Route 10 to have direct access to Route 10 becomes important because every one of those driveways that you put in becomes a conflict point and becomes a congestion point. So by limiting those and putting everyone on this new network of a service road that we've created, we also reduce the congestion on Route 10. And that's how we're able to push the idea in the master planning scenario of widening Route 10 through this segment out 20 years or more. So this project is significantly more than just a roundabout for Wawa.
Oh, I understand that. I do. Yeah, that just seems to be the main focus. It really is. Like, I get, and everything you just said, I'm on the same page with you as far as the traffic flow and all that. I completely understand all that. Looking at, say, with the tax promises we need to make for what we don't know, that's just a hard position to be in, because we have a lot of unknowns out there. And right now, the only way we can sit up here and say we can pay for this is through our tax revenue, because we don't have things on the books that we can go back to and look, we got that. We know we can get partial money from that. All the questions that we have are in the future, and if the future changes and things go to a no, then everything is taxed. That's the hard part.
Correct, and one of the things our board had to look at as well is the opportunity cost if the project does not move forward, and what it looks like in 5 years when we need this based on the 75% background growth regardless of the new projects. And how do we handle this when this is not the project that's on the table, but it's this project without funding?
And is there a way the county can take it, and then we have some sort of supplemental deal of, we'll promise as much as we can as we know, but it's gonna have to be open-ended until we start nailing things down. And once we nail things down, then our commitment will be there, but not until the nail goes into the wood. We can't promise things that we just don't know. I don't know if there's other ways that we could work through this. Because the project, I think, is not, I'm not arguing the project itself in the traffic flow. I think that's makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think this is a unique situation because we have, two governing bodies on either side of a road that control the development on their side of the road. And that's one of the difficulties here. We had this similar situation at Ben's Grant intersection, but we were the only governing body there controlling that. And that project was built before the development ever went in place. So we don't usually get an opportunity to build something, a traffic improvement, before the growth happens. It's usually after the growth happens. And we've all been through numerous intersections in the area where it gets to a point of failure, and then everybody starts to do the work. So this is an opportunity to fix a problem before it becomes worse.
But the growth on both sides, that's a problem I have. Another problem I have is the growth on the Smithfield side is called the promontory. The water rights goes to the county. So the county benefits more than the town does on that. So I understand the traffic flow and all that and the cost of it, but there's more of 16 cents, 16 per hundred on property tax versus, I think you're 70 something. That's just, the benefit goes more towards the town. That's why I was saying if there was a cost benefit analysis of it, then the benefit would go for the promontory would actually benefit the county more than the town itself. So I agree with you on growth on both sides, but this is not a situation where growth on both sides are completely independent. If they were, then I would understand what you're saying.
Well, the water rights, of course, were a separate deal, based on.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm using that only as an example. That's not something I'm gonna go back and say, let's revisit that. No. I'm just using that as a benefit towards what I found out through my digging. That's all.
I guess one thing that concerns me is we're talking about two independent entities, when in reality, we're not two independent entities. We're the town of Smithfield, residents of the county of Isle of Wight. If you don't think so, you can go look in my drawer right now and see the tax bills that have got stacked up in there. And I'm beginning to wonder, was that taken into consideration as well? That just, I don't quite understand why, as citizens of Isle of Wight County, we're not getting a little bit of benefit as far as this is concerned, and I don't see it there.
Again, I think the issue is the town controls what happens on the west side of Turner Drive. The county controls what happens on the east side of Turner Drive. So without action by the town, we wouldn't have any way of planning for the development that could or could not happen on the town side. So that's why it's a collaboration. This is strictly a land use issue, not a tax-based issue or anything like that. The town could approve something on your side of the line that completely derail this project, or that's why it's designed together. as a regional TIA. You know, it's very similar to what we're doing there at the intersection of Route 10 and 258 there with the Grange. I mean, you know, we've already gotten a smart scale grant to increase that intersection, to add more turn lanes, but it requires collaboration with the town on how the site plan for the Grange works out.
Okay.
That's a good observation, Randy. I'm glad you brought that up, because that area is really in the town limits. How did the county get involved with that? Because of the smart scale grant, because of the relationship with VDOT?
Because the town can't apply for smart scale grants, correct?
The town can apply for smart scale grants. The county pursued that because it's on a VDOT arterial right there at the Route 10 bypass. We had a previous safety study done at that location that said that the project needed to be pursued, and the town's resources were going in a different direction, so the county pursued it. And we have found through time that it's more efficient for us to execute projects, usually under local administration, than to hand the money to VDOT and let them do it. So we prefer to do it that way, much like we're bringing to the table this time 2 different grant funding sources plus project administration to try to make it as efficient as possible for all of the citizens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The town can apply for the revenue grants, correct? The revenue grants can only be done by the county.
The town can apply for revenue share.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm wrong on that one too.
But it is a matter of whether or not the town has the resources to also go through with project administration on multiple grants at the same time.
It's like we're doing the sidewalk project as well on behalf of
Right.
the town.
I have a question.
Councilman Smith?
Timeline on this project, do you have any idea at all? They spoke about that?
So we did have the original timeline. I think it was in one of the older presentations. I believe it was not starting until FY 27, 28. However, based on the project, I think we have presented previously and had presented to your treasurer's office that we could probably get approval to advance the project to this coming summer, which would be 25, to start PE.
And the duration of the project?
It would probably be a year to a year and a half for PE. We're not anticipating any right-of-way acquisition and very minor utility relocations based on what we know at the location, and then another year for construction. So approximately 3 years in total.
But Jamie, didn't you tell us basically at the last meeting, if my memory serves me correctly, that we wouldn't be expected to contribute anything until 2029?
If we moved forward on the original schedule, it would be 29. I did provide the advanced schedule to your staff as well for them to take a look at. But the idea is that we could probably not look for a direct payment from the town until we get to construction advertisement. There's 2 reasons for that. One, because we would not necessarily need it based on the other funding commitments that we have, because we could fund PE based on the funding commitments that we have, and 2, because at that point we would have a stronger estimate. So if there were, for example, any project savings to be had, then the commitment would actually be the pro rata share of whatever the actual construction estimate was at that time.
This road that you talk about behind the commercial part, would Tractor Supply be required to leave that way? Or can they still come out as they do now and go right, which seems to be the problem? So would they be sort of asked to go that way from then on? You could go into Tractor Supply.
You can't take their access away. I don't think,
Yeah, I know, I didn't say to take it away.
no, but I mean,
I'm
right
just
now,
saying, yeah, I mean, would they have access to use that road in the back to get out if they wanted to?
We've seen it conceptualized both ways. This is a master planning effort, so that level of engineering hasn't been fully completed yet, and that road is going to come online as your projects develop. So at this point, it's just conceptualized, and it's conceptualized to go all the way through that connection, but we don't have plans for what that actually looks like. That would have to come to fruition at a later time.
But the possibility of that happening could be there, right?
Yes. Now that is, like Mr. Riddick said, that
Yeah,
does
no,
not
I'm not
include
talking about
taking
taking
the
it.
fund.
Mike, one of the scenarios was that the feeder road for those commercial lots on the Layden property that go
Right.
from Tractor Supply Way to Turner Drive, some of them show that they would come out right there at Tractor Supply. that would be the,
That would be the bottleneck that you're
Yeah,
trying to stop.
right.
to create. I'm just thinking that it would also benefit that customer base to go out that way too if they wanted to.
Yes, I think if you look closely at the map that's included in the presentation, and I don't know if we can flip in there, but you can see in a very generalized way, one more please, the yellow dotted lines going through those parcels. That's kind of the idea of that additional road network. The circles would be new intersections, some are larger than others, and then the dotted lines would be basically a new road network that creates connections so that people can travel internally on those parcels instead of having to go to Route 10 for access to everything. But again, this is a high-level diagram. This would have to come on board as projects actually did or did not develop.
You know, I see this as a massive growth spot in this area, and to address it now is a logical thing to do. I think I'm general consensus of everybody else. I have problems with the financing and where we're gonna get it from, our percentages and so forth. I think if we can work that out, I think we can move forward with the project, and because it is gonna be needed, it's already needed. So to wait 3-4 more years, it's gonna tell the tale of no planning at all.
Well, you set the table for me. I'll just go ahead and attack the elephant in the room. If we decide not to vote for this, is the county going to proceed with it regardless?
I don't know. That's up to, I mean, it would have to go back to our board.
Because hooking to what Councilman Smith said, the deviation or the variation of 900,000 possibly to 2.3 million with a possibility of 1 million overrun,
No.
or half of that,
The 1 million is built into that
into
number
the
as
2.3.
contingency.
It's still a lot of money with a lot of, what ifs that concern me. And I still believe, and I want to work together, and I always have wanted to work together, but I don't know how much benefit we're getting as county citizens, as town residents. That worries me a little bit as well.
I do agree with what Mike says, and I guess the cost, as long as we have a clear understanding of the project itself, I think the financing side of it is something that we need to decide on. We have an opportunity now to plan for the future where
I agree
there has been
100%.
some concern where we didn't do it in the past. And if we don't take the opportunity to do something this time, I think Jamie said the next opportunity, I can't remember how far out it would be. And if that happens, what is it going to cost us then?
Yes, ma'am. I said that. I don't know if you were here or not, but anyway, I said specifically.
I won't at the last.
Yes, ma'am. I
Yeah.
specifically said that at the last meeting, and it concerned me about bottlenecking citizens back into Smithfield proper, and having the potential to work out a solution. I got to worry about the money. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the concept, although I do, from a traffic safety, and you're the professional, although I've worked a lot of wrecks in my life, I worry about that long stretch of Turner Drive approaching that roundabout. I hope there's some good traffic calming that occurs before the traffic that's running at potentially high speeds gets to that roundabout. That does worry me a little bit. Anyway, like I said, you're the professional. I just had to come up and clean up some stuff. Anyway. Any other, Mr. Collins?
Mr. Keaton, has there been any other discussions with supervisors as far as of what the mayor said? If this is there any discussions that we can consider like a plan B? If the financing we don't believe in it or something like I said, is there something that the county would take as action from us that would help with the project, but not yet commit us to something that we just don't understand?
You mean as far as having like a third version of,
Yeah.
or a fourth
Contingency.
version?
A contingency, something, yeah. That allows the county to move forward with the Smithfield understanding that we do want to help. We love the project, we love the idea, but the numbers just aren't adding up. The tax commitment just is not adding up to us. But if you guys could do this for us, and in the out years, we could continue working together, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, just if there was any,
Well, I mean, there's been 3 versions of this plan, so there's nothing wrong with the 4th version.
Plus, I'm a little worried, I mean, we were talking about development earlier. I don't want this obligation to be observed or considered as pressure on our planning commission or someone else that's like, okay, y'all, we're out for $2.3 million, and whether it's right, wrong, or whatever perception at times is reality. And I don't want it to be perceived that because we are on an obligation for 2.3, they should be moving toward doing something to address that issue. That worries me a little bit as well.
Mr. Mayor, that's precisely what this does.
Correct.
This essentially investment, whether it be 900 or 2.3, becomes an economic development incentive provided by the town of Smithfield and its residents. Because we are saying we are building roads, and this is something we haven't done before. We are building roads in front of anticipated growth. So what I feel, or what I'm concerned is that if we were to approve this today, we're saying, come on, Cypress Run, come on, Turner North, we're putting in roads because we want this developed, okay? So that's a scary side of, if we were to move forward with this, that's what we would be saying. I think loud and clear, because the town of Smithfield has never put in roads ahead of time saying, we anticipate growth coming. On the other side of that coin, we're foolish to think it's not coming. You know, we have Ben's Grant, we have Riverside Hospital within a stone's throw of here, a mile or so. It's coming. Sweetgrass is coming. I don't believe anybody has put up a wall around Smithfield yet and said, growth's not coming in here. When I voted for Mallory Scott and the Grange, my intention after that, and granted I won't be on council, was to let's let these come on board. Let's get them developed a little bit. Let's see how we handle the growth before we approve anything else. That'll be up to the future councils to see what happens there. But if we put these roads in now, we're looking for a return on at least $1.3 million relatively quickly on projects that this town council nor this town's planning commission has seen yet. And I almost feel like that's, you know, that there's already a perception that some residents feel that, oh, well, they're just going to approve everything that comes there. Well, if you build roads ahead of time, it's not just a perception. You've kind of put your money where your mouth is. And it would be hard for a planning commission to say, well, we just spent $1.5 million on roads for these guys, and well, see you guys later. This isn't the right project. It becomes very difficult for us to do that. You know, but we have to plan for our future, like everybody's talking about. This is a very difficult decision. You know, some of the conversation I've heard here, and is maybe to summarize, like, hey, we're in charge, we're in favor of this, but we can counteroffer. We can say, you know, Alawite County, we're down, but we're down for $500,000 or whatever rationale we determine to come up with. And let's not make it an arbitrary number, but you know, Mr. Collins is right. He said, well, we don't get the water revenue, we don't get as much real estate revenue, but we do get some revenue, so here's what we're willing to put forward for it. But again, when we do that, guys, we're saying we are hotbedding this area for growth. One thing that we haven't talked about here is that when you look on, you know, Sweetgrass isn't putting in as much money, and I kind of understand that because they're on the other side of the road and they're not really using as much. And Wawa's small, you can't ask them to do so much, but we have the whole high school and the possible future school site down there. And they are slated for 4% of the cost sharing. Well, at 7:30 and 3:30, the backup there is 100% because of the schools. And if we put another school down there, clearly that's not going to help with it. So, you know, maybe we say, well, you know, we'd like to see the schools put in a little bit more here too, because they are Alawite County funded through our joint taxes. You know, I don't know that this council, based on this conversation, in the next 15 minutes, are prepared to vote yea or nay on here. It sounded like Ms. Oliver said, as long as we continue to move forward and not stall it so far, you know, maybe we can get this by in the next 3 or 4 weeks and do so. What I think maybe we ought to do as a council is regroup, talk, and see what we want to do. And if this is something we want to move forward with, I would suggest that we come back with a counteroffer from the town that the board of supervisors can or cannot agree with, but go into there with good faith and negotiating with the board that we want to be good members, because this has to work on both sides. You know, we can't ask Alawite County to support us all the time, and then when they come and say, hey, we need your support, it's like, oh, no. We have to do that on both sides. We have to do that in good faith.
Absolutely.
Those are my thoughts on this, and this is a difficult decision because, you know, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, we want to plan for the future, but we don't have the money to put the roads in ahead of time. But if we do, we're planning on it to grow, and it's a difficult decision.
And this is one of those, it's the hen house before the chickens.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but Isle of Wight County and the town of Smithfield, we're desirable, guys. Our population is growing. This is where people want to be. You know, there are counties out there, there are cities close to us that are declining population and wish they were in our position, you know? If you try and do business in Suffolk, you find the planning department not to be as anxious to help you as in Newport News. In Newport News, they are just, what can we do? Let's help. And in Suffolk, like, we're overwhelmed and trying to keep up. You know, and that's because there's a difference in economic growth. In Suffolk and Isle of Wight County are all growing. And if we don't think so, we're silly to think that. So we're in a very enviable position, but how we control and manage that growth is going to be a very, very difficult task. And I'm not talking about today and just this decision. I've been on town council 12 and a half years, and I believe that the 12 and a half years I've done were easy compared to the 12 and a half years that are coming. I think we have a lot of growth stuff to look at and make sure that we manage correctly, and this is just a part of it. I don't know if that helps us with our decisions at all, but that's what we have to do.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Further comments? Mr. Riddick, do you have a comment?
Just one thing that everybody needs to know, based on this timeline that Mr. Smith asked about, if they do this in 2025 or 26 or 27, the ability to exact proffers out of the other Smithfield development is going to be really difficult because under proffer laws, they're really restricted now, and the ability to get proffers for off-site improvements that have already been built is going to be very difficult, if not impossible. So they're allocating about $900,000 to that, and I don't know that you'll ever really be able to get it unless it's voluntary.
Mr. Riddick, is that to say that if somebody were to build a new development at a different section in town, down Route 10, that we, at least with the transportation rules, that we could say, hey, well, we need you to proffer for some of this intersection, or do we not have the ability
It's
to do
going
that?
to be, you have to be able to show a direct nexus between this development and that improvement. And it's really hard to do. It used to be much more loose than that. And it's not, you know, they can do anything they want to voluntarily, but to put pressure on a developer to say, look, we just spent collectively $11 million on these traffic improvements, and we expected you to pay your share for something that got built 5 years ago is very questionable.
I got a question. Randy,
Councilman Smith?
Didn't the Mallory Scott, didn't Napolitano help out with the road that's cutting through across Reynolds Drive? He voluntarily did that, is that correct?
Correct. He had two options. Either he had to make improvements, I think, Titus Creek and part of Nike Park, but he contributed to the project that we're extending through for Nike Park Extended, 1.1 million.
But in that case, Mr. Smith, it was directly related to his traffic count
Yes, right.
for an improvement to be built in the future, which is kind of
So
exactly.
in other words, what you're saying then, Bill, is if the road had been built and then Mallory Scott was approved, he wouldn't have to do anything.
It'd be pretty difficult to make him
Right,
do
get
it.
him to give him
Why would
money.
he want to, unless, at that point, it was a county improvement anyhow, why would he be willing to, it's all hypothetical, but yes, to answer your question.
But we're doing the exact same thing with Riverside. Riverside was theoretically approved years ago, then they came back, it went dormant for a while, and then their proffer and their portion of Ben's grant, 8 years after that intersection was built.
And back to that whole, but Mr. Pack makes a really good point, but I think you need to look at this as if you're not going to get any of it back. That's your bottom line. If you just assume that you're not going to get any of it back, then you have to decide, does it make sense? Should we pay for something now that we can get for VDOT money for Because if we don't do it, we're gonna end up needing it later and may not get any help on it. But don't assume that you're gonna get any of the money back, because you can't, I don't think it's fair to put that kind of pressure on your planning commission to make them approve something to fund traffic improvements. That's what I don't think anybody wants you to do. So I think you have to, your analysis has to be, well, does this make any sense just because it makes sense? And maybe we get funding back from developers or not. I think that's your analysis, because I don't think you can realistically count on any of that money without essentially signaling that you're gonna approve those developments, and I don't think there's any guarantee that you can do that.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that being said, when we look at the cost sharing versus the benefit, possible burden, the possible overruns of the budget and the possible tax implication for the citizen, I beg the question, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Well, and I would encourage you also, when you're looking at that, I think your return on investment, and is this the right project? And you're looking at 2.3 million, and for a community of the size of Smithfield, and also considering the fact that you're also county residents, that's a big deal. But I think you need to look at the town holistically, because your transportation is a network. So this project fits into your network, and your network of Route 10 includes the $9 million that we've brought to the table for the smart scale improvements up by the Grange. It includes the $8 million that was done for Nike Park Trail. It includes the almost $2 million that's being brought to the table for the Smithfield sidewalk. It includes a lot of projects. It includes the $3.5 million that we're bringing in grant funds to this project, plus all of the project administration. So your return on investment is not just that 2.3 against our 2.3. It's actually your entire network, because all of those things, it includes the 17 million that we brought to the table for Nike Park Extended. So all of these things are part of your network as a town.
And I think with joint collaboration, Jamie, that's important. For you to describe it that way.
I think so too. I think that was important too. That
Yeah.
was good. I wouldn't want to negotiate with you. So, Michael, have you ever looked at where Mr. Pack was going with a counter offer? I'm sorry, your plan for revenue sharing?
When we started talking about this, to the attorney's point, we had to make the assumption that we're not going to get any of it back.
Right.
Ideally, we would like any development that comes to any of these areas that were identified in the traffic study to pay their identified pro rata share. And so over time, hopefully we recoup that money. But we have to go into it assuming we are paying all of it, knowing that, again, those projects aren't approved. And to Mr. Pack's point, we don't want to pressure our other appointed officials to feel like they have to approve something. So we go in knowing we are contributing all the money with no concrete expectation of return.
But is there a way we can develop another position? Another sharing a pro rata position to where, for the town's position, this would probably be, from our position, this is now what we think is fair. I mean, I'm not gonna say this is unfair, but let me just say, for argument's sake, this is unfair. So now that we think this is
have
fair.
not looked at any other funding scenario, as far as numbers are concerned. Again, I think a position of we agree to the concept and we'll ask for all the money we can from, that's not the pro rata
Yes.
share of funds from developers as they come online. I don't think that's 100% reasonable. It's just a question of whether council is comfortable fronting the money and then hopefully paying ourselves back or not.
Dear Jim, I think the question is this the cost of doing business in a developing area?
Right. I mean, there's no
That's
question.
a loaded question. Going back to Mr. Pack's point.
Well, it goes
Build it,
back
they
to
will
what
come.
Randy said,
Yes.
and it makes sense. So
Yes,
we're gonna,
absolutely.
build a road and the developers are gonna come,
Yep.
or they think that there's something positive for them to look in Smithfield.
Right.
I think it's something for us to consider too, that, is that what we want? Or should we just do this project based on what the future growth is already gonna look like?
It's also a cost-benefit analysis as far as traffic flow, traffic safety, and
Yeah.
what we ultimately want to leave. I don't want to use the term as a legacy, but, what we do as council members and decision makers are ultimately, at times, a legacy for what is going to be for the betterment or to the detriment sometimes as far as our citizenry is concerned. And I think that plays a significant part in this as well. Talking out of
It's a
both
tough
sides,
situation,
it's point counterpoint is what it is.
Yeah, well, and the way I look at it is, to your point is, you want to leave a legacy. How many times have you heard the council was really smart by doing that? Very few times do you hear that from any government, facility. So I see that being a tough situation. I mean, I know you probably still wish the water deal had never happened in Ottawa County, but
I agree with it.
and look how long it's had to take to even think about trying to get something turned around and do the right thing. I think sooner or later, we're all gonna be faced with water problems. But that was so far away that, who knows, the vision of that could have been the right decision, so.
I think that was absolutely the right decision. The board was very forward-looking to lock up that amount of water. A lot of communities really wish they had the amount of water we have.
They do, but the perception of the general public was, what the hell do they do that for? So,
Perceptions aren't always accurate.
well, that's true, but it takes a hard time to swallow those pills sometimes.
But I don't believe that the project itself would be judged negatively in the future. It's just the cost sharing today on how we
Today.
get there.
That's the whole thing I
is-
think all
yes.
of us have
Yeah.
tried to come to, is to realize what really is our share.
Right, exactly. That's, that's the hard part. The project, I think, has its merit. Just how do we get there? That's a hurdle I can't get over.
Okay. Based on the negotiations y'all been having, what can we do to make this work?
Well, I mean,
Other than, you have an alternative, y'all are in this business and
Yeah.
you've been doing this a long time. Do you have an idea that we have not thought of? 'Cause we're not,
I mean, we're not here prepared to throw out a scenario, but I think if the council wanted to go back and, like I say, come up with a scenario 4
Yeah.
for the board to look at, I think like Jamie said, we're bringing, 2.2 million, well, $3.2 million in grant funds to this project that it really would be unsustainable if we didn't have that much grant money to make this project work. So that's one of the advantages. I was just asking her, I said, I think the Ben's Grant intersection was pretty controversial at the time too. That was a $5 million project. Can you imagine what that project would cost today if we hadn't built it for $5 million back in 2016? That intersection works beautifully now. So there's a lot of things you have to do ahead of time that may be a little uncomfortable in the very beginning, but it works out over time. I'm not saying that these numbers there's nothing set in stone about these numbers, but that's just, there were a private scenario, a county scenario, and then we blended them together. Nothing to say you can't have a 4th scenario.
Mr. Mayor, why don't we delay our vote today? And I don't know if a work session might be the best way, but I think this council, I don't think it's something we ask staff to do. We don't say, hey, staff, what do you think we ought to be? I think this council ought to figure out perhaps where these scenarios, but we know who the key players are. We know who's involved. And we want to talk cost allocations. Let us get together in a public setting, develop our cost sharing scenarios, what we think we can live with, and then return and give a counter proposal to the county, whether it be the same thing we have now or something different. But it gives us an opportunity to say, okay, we'll continue to move forward. It keeps Ms. Oliver's folks happy as long as we do this expeditiously, and say, here's what the town is willing to do to move this forward. Or perhaps we say nothing. I mean, we can still use that as an option. There's nothing on the road, but that gives us an opportunity. I think we have a better understanding today of how this all works and what the financial impact looks like than we did coming into this meeting. I hope we do. But I think we can sit down and hash out some cost sharing scenarios where we feel that it's more in line with our perceived fairness.
So there's a motion, I second.
I agree.
I don't know that we would need to have a motion.
That's what, yeah, you can. I'm too used to being a committee.
But you were on it today, Bill. Good job, buddy, for sure.
I don't know that we need to have a motion, but I think that we could just say.
By
do-
consensus.
Do we extend this meeting? Mr. Rick, what would be the proper way to do this, because this is
Yeah,
something that needs
'cause
to happen
you're gonna have
quickly.
a
Quick.
council meeting
Overlap.
next week, so that's, you're not gonna be doing it between now and Tuesday, are you?
No, sir.
Okay, well then, there's no need to do that.
Okay.
Okay, just by consensus, then we'll, Michael, get some dates, get the
It'll be
schedule.
on the agenda for Wednesday,
Okay,
the council.
yep, we can set it then.
Yes, sir.
And we have a work session next Thursday, so.
Let me be, from a mayoral perspective and from, I think, from the leadership and consensus perspective, let it be known that we want to work with the county. We want to make sure that this works. This is not a, go away, we don't, no, not at all. Because even before I got on council, I've always wanted Isle of Wight County and Smithfield to work in tandem, work well together, because when we all benefit, we all benefit. And that's what I want. And I think with the folks sitting around this table, or whoever's sitting around the table, we can work something out. Because I feel a sincere desire, and I don't think that I'm wrong, that these folks want this to work. So, and we understand the future. We get it. We know that. So, and we don't want to be the impediment that caused this to potentially fail when we know, as someone said earlier, it's coming, and we need to be proactive. I think Mike said that, or Jim, or whatever. But anyway, I think we all feel that way. So, just as you go back to the board, let there be no mistake. And I hope the press quotes me, like I just said, that make no mistake, we want to work with the county. We want this to work.
Well, our board had a retreat on Friday, and we talked about identity and about how, people don't realize, a lot of times people don't know exactly where they live sometimes, but especially with counties, they don't realize where they are sometimes. And towns and cities are places that people know about, better. If you're trying to explain to someone where you're from, it's easier to explain where Smithfield is than try to describe where Isle of Wight County is.
Sure.
So, obviously what's good for the town is good for the county.
Agreed.
And we hope vice versa.
Agreed. Anything else from council on this matter? Thank y'all so much for coming. Thank you for continuing to work with us. We appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I have just a quick question.
Mr. Pack,
Did we decide that our next council meeting, which is Wednesday, whatever that date is, this upcoming Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, that we're going to have a work session to discuss this that evening?
It will be on the agenda that evening.
It'll be on the agenda that evening to
To be
discuss.
set.
Okay. That means we have some homework to do, guys. We
Yes.
need to go through and look at this and see what you think is comfortable, what you're comfortable with, so we can have some insightful conversation when we get there.
now,
Time
the
of
other
the
thing
essence
though, as you do your homework, I think Mr. Riddick hit it right on the money. Please realize that we may not get anything back, but at the same time, work diligently to come up with a solution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's my 2 cents. Anything, and let's see what we got. Our agenda. Did you have anything else for this council meeting? Any new business?
No, sir.
Any old business? Any further to come before council? The meeting from October 2nd continued today is adjourned. Now, y'all need a break or anything, or before we go into the committee meeting?